we're Baptists. We're not brutalized because we're Methodists. We're not brutalized because we're Muslims. We're not brutalized because we're Catholics. We're brutalized because we are black people in America. Go where the Uncle Toms are, and you'll find the house Negro. Go where the Negro leaders are, and you'll find the house Negro. And despite the anti-Muslim propaganda, the followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad constitute the fastest growing religious group in the entire Western Hemisphere. So don't you be fooled by Kennedy. Don't you be fooled by these Uncle Tom Negro preachers. When the dog attacks you, you get that dog, two-legged dog or four-legged dog.
Do you consider yourself militant?
I consider myself Malcolm. Last year we set in, what did we get? We crawled in, what did we get? We even marched in, and what did we get? So 1964 threatens to be a very explosive year.
A firebomb was tossed into the home of Malcolm X here in New York City early this morning.
I wanted you to know that my house was bombed.
Are you inferring then that because of this conspiracy, the attempt was made upon your life?
The attempt was made upon my life because I speak my mind and I know too much, and they know that I will speak it whether they like it or not.
I am at the Audubon Ballroom. Pandemonium is the only word that I can use to describe the scene here.
I want to kill somebody. Before the night's over, if Malcolm dies, somebody gonna die.
The killer has taunted return.
Patricia Hearst
Was a complete surprise.
but a fake.
Is that another airplane?
Everybody get out now.
The most active person in the spreading of the black Muslim movement is Elijah Muhammad's second in command, who calls himself Malcolm X. And Malcolm X is our guest today on City Desk. How did you happen to join the Muslim movement?
I was in prison. I was a very wayward, criminal, backward, illiterate, uneducated type of person until I heard the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And he teaches us that because of the seriousness of the condition that our people now find themselves in, the only way that we can solve our problem is to unite together among ourselves, among our own kind, and try and solve our problem ourselves.
What is your real name?
Malcolm X.
That's your legal name?
As far as I'm concerned, it's my legal name.
Have you been to court to establish this?
I didn't have to go to court to be called Murphy or Jones or Smith. Excuse me for answering you this way.
That's
If
all right.
a Chinese person were to be walking around named Murphy or Jones or Johnson or Bunch or Powell, I think it would be just as improper for a black person.
Would you mind telling me what your father's last name was?
The last name of my forefathers was taken from them when they were brought to America and made slaves. And then the name of the slave master was given, which we refuse. We reject that name today.
You mean you won't even tell me what your father's supposed last name was or gifted last name was?
I never acknowledge it whatsoever.
Negro students were turned away from a white high school in Little Rock, Arkansas by National Guardsmen.
I don't believe in segregation. I believe in slavery.
Dissenters is taking to street corner step ladders, church pulpits, sports arenas, and ballroom platforms across the United States. to preach a gospel of hate that would set off a federal investigation if it were preached by Southern whites. These homegrown, Negro American Muslims are the most powerful of the black supremacist groups. They have their own parochial schools, like this one in Chicago, where Muslim children are taught to hate the white man. They have their own stores, supermarkets, restaurants. Their story of hatred for the white man is carried in many Negro newspapers. 4 or 5 times a year, the Muslims assemble in one of America's major cities to hear their leader, Elijah Muhammad. Every devout Muslim is eager to attend these meetings for some time between now and 1970, and at just such a rally as this, the Muslim leader has intimated that he will give the call for the destruction of the white man.
This coming destruction of the white man, will there be any bloodshed involved in this, or will it be a complete massacre?
According to the teachings of the prophets of old and of God himself, there will be plenty of bloodshed.
Here comes their spiritual leader, Elijah Muhammad. He's actually Elijah Poole of Hawkinsville, Georgia.
The Christian religion has failed you. You want freedom, you want equality. I get none.
How do you feel about the Honorable Elijah
Honorable Elijah Muhammad is trying to teach all our original people they are in bad shape.
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
Honorable Elijah Muhammad trying to wake them up.
You think he'll do it?
Yes, sir.
He's the only man with a program, right?
Yes, sir.
I've listened to the Elijah Muhammad movement and the Black Nationalist movement, and I have heard the NAACP. And I don't feel that the NAACP's views are the way out. I think that together, with our own people, more can be accomplished, rather than with the white man involved in it also, because as it is, we've already been accepting too many crumbs from this man, and we've never really gotten a real loaf of bread from him.
Minister Malcolm X.
In the church, we used to sing the song, Good News, the chariot is coming. While you sit here today, knowing that you have come to hear good news, you must realize in advance what's good news for you might be bad news for somebody else. What's good news for the sheep might be bad news for the wolf.
Minister Malcolm X, the Muslims' New York leader and ambassador at large for the movement. He is a remarkable man, a man who, by his own admission, was once a procurer and dope peddler. He served time for robbery in the Michigan and Massachusetts state penitentiaries. But now he's a changed man. He will not smoke or drink. He will not even eat in a restaurant that houses a tavern. He told Newsbeat that his life changed for him when the Muslim faith taught him no longer to be ashamed of being a black man.
They're passing the basket through the crowd, and I think everybody standing here should put $1 in that basket. Don't you think you should? Sure, these are freedom dollars, brother. We're not asking you to give us some money to make us rich. We put up businesses. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad has set up more businesses than any black man in America. He's not trying to build churches, he's trying to build businesses. Because businesses make jobs for you, and churches don't make jobs for anybody but preaching.
Mr. Malcolm, what do you think of Martin Luther King?
I think that any black man who teaches black people to turn the other cheek and suffer peacefully after they've been turning the cheek and suffering peacefully for 400 years in a land of bondage under the most cruel, inhuman, and wicked slave master that any people have ever been under, he is doing those people an injustice, and he's a traitor to his own people.
Some years ago, when I first studied the Gandhian philosophy and the method of nonviolent resistance, I came to the conclusion that it was the most potent weapon available to oppress people in their struggle for freedom and human dignity.
Possible for them to get a fair trial, there wouldn't be no necessity for a trial at all. These are the victims of police bullets, and you don't take the victim in court as a criminal. You take the one who shot the victim in court, and it is the police who should be on trial here in Los Angeles.
Police came over to kill all that they could of my followers in Mosque number 27. We know that we're going to lose a few, but we know that God's going to kill all of you.
For you and me to devise some kind of method or strategy to offset some of the events or repetition of the events that have taken place here in Los Angeles recently, we have to go to the root. We have to go to the cause. Dealing with the condition itself is not enough, and it is because of our effort toward getting straight to the root that people oftentimes think we're dealing in hate. We are oppressed. We are exploited. We are downtrodden. We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights. So the only way we're going to get some of this oppression and exploitation away from us or aside from us is come together against the common enemy. Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate? You should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you? And I, for one, as a Muslim, believe that the white man is intelligent enough. If he were made to realize how black people really feel and how fed up we are without that old compromising sweet talk. Stop sweet talking it. Tell him how you feel. Tell him what kind of hell you've been catching, and let him know that if he's not ready to clean his house up, if he's not ready to clean his house up, he shouldn't have a house. It should catch on fire and burn down.
campus this weekend is something like being in the eye of a hurricane. You know you're in the midst of trouble, but there's a quietness and serenity here that tries to mislead you.
Americans are free and sure to disagree with the law, but not to disobey it. For any government of laws and not of men, no man, however prominent or powerful, is entitled to defy a court of law.
James H. Meredith, son of a cotton farmer, grandson of a slave, and applicant for admission to the University of Mississippi.
James, why do you want to enter the University of Mississippi?
Well, I think that every citizen should have an opportunity to receive an education in his own state.
What is your organization's position of what happened in Mississippi, such as the James Meredith incident and the enrollment of him in the university? Well, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad wants justice for every one of the 20 million so-called Negroes, and to just take one Negro and stick him in college, in my opinion, sir, it's only hypocrisy to pretend that they are for justice by pushing one Negro in and blowing it up all over the world to make it look like they're solving the problem when millions of black people in that state are still going to segregated schools and getting an inferior education.
Malcolm X, one of the most articulate exponents of the black Muslim philosophy, has said of your movement and your philosophy that it plays into the hands of the white oppressors, that they are happy to hear you talk about love for the oppressor because this disarms the Negro.
Now, this is what I tried to teach in the struggle in the South, that we are not engaged in a struggle that means we sit down and do nothing. That there's a great deal of difference between non-resistance to evil and non-violent resistance.
The Reverend Martin Luther King preaches a doctrine of non-violent insistence upon the rights of the American Negro. What is your attitude toward this philosophy?
The white man pays Reverend Martin Luther King, subsidizes Reverend Martin Luther King, so that Reverend Martin Luther King can continue to teach the Negroes to be defenseless. That's what you mean by nonviolent. Be defenseless. Be defenseless in the face of one of the most cruel beasts that has ever taken the people into captivity. That's the American white man.
Martin Luther King flew back into Birmingham last night after having informed a Memphis audience there would be major demonstrations in the Steel City. He has called Birmingham the last bastion of segregation in the South, promises a long, hot summer for Alabama.
California last year, the police shot Ronald Stokes through the heart. Although we are not integrationists, and we believe that you're a fool to try and mix with someone who doesn't love you, that doesn't mean that we in any way condone what those crackers are doing in Birmingham, Alabama. Our people should know better, that whenever you try and force yourself upon someone that vicious, he's going to go to extremes to show you that he's actually the dog that he is. Because it's the two-legged dog that controls the four-legged dog. And it is no accident that as long as the dogs were biting Negro women, Negro babies, and Negro children, Kennedy said nothing.
It was only after the Negroes began to strike back. It was then that Kennedy called in the army. So don't you be fooled by Kennedy. Don't you be fooled by these Uncle Tom Negro preachers. When the dog attacks you, you get that dog, two-legged dog or four-legged dog.
Good evening, my fellow citizens. This nation was founded by men of many nations and backgrounds. It was founded on the principle that all men are created equal. But are we to say to the world, and much more importantly to each other, that this is a land of the free, except for the Negroes? That we have no second-class citizens, except Negroes? Today we are committed to a worldwide struggle to promote and protect the rights of all who wish to be free.
First reaction from the generally recognized Negro leadership, Martin Luther King.
I feel that it was a masterpiece. I think that the president spoke passionately to the moral issues in the integration struggle, and I think he made it very clear that the government, the administration, will now engage in vigorous, forthright action to bring about the realization of the American dream.
The man didn't say anything until he found out that black people in this country were ready to explode. And as soon as he saw that the explosion then was a threat to the white society, he came up with this mealy-mouthed speech. You will never get real freedom and recognition between black and white people in this country without rewriting the entire Constitution. It'll be a complete destruction of everything that America supposedly stands for.
The long-awaited March for Jobs and Freedom on Washington, D.C. has started. About 10 minutes ago, the march began, headed off down Constitution Avenue, headed toward the Lincoln Memorial, which is where we're seated now. Here at the Lincoln Memorial, the sight is almost something no Washingtonian has beheld before. As you look down the reflecting pool, you can see on the south side of the pool a solid phalanx of marchers.
The march was controlled by the president. The government told the marchers what signs to carry, what songs to sing, what speeches they could make and what speeches they could not make. The original black militants had planned to march on the White House, on the Senate, on the Congress, but the shrewd politicians in Washington, D.C., realizing that these black militants could not be stopped, joined them, and thereby these white liberals were able to lead them away from the White House, away from the Capitol, away from the Senate, and away from the Congress, and away from victory.
All right, just pass it back. All right, I'll start on this side.
The government told the marchers on Washington what time to arrive in Washington, where to arrive, and when to arrive. Then the government channeled them from the arrival point to the feet of a dead president named Washington and let them march from there to the feet of another dead president named Lincoln. Who ever heard of a nonviolent revolution? Who ever heard of a peaceful revolution? Who ever heard of revolutionaries standing up like chumps with locked arms singing, "We shall overcome"?
It's just like when you got some coffee that's too black, which means it's too strong. What you do, you integrate it with cream. You make it weak. If you pour too much cream in, you won't even know you ever had coffee. It used to be hot, it becomes cool. It used to be strong, it becomes weak. It used to wake you up, now it'll put you to sleep.